Cain and Abel, the first murder in history. Welcome to my channel. It's me. And today, we're going to look at Cain and Abel, the story of the first murder. What is the first thing that pops into your head when you hear the name Cain? What about Abel? If you are like me, nothing comes to mind. And this is because even though they are so significant in our history, it is very hard to find information about them. We know more about their descendants than about the actual Cains and Abel. Their story is found in Genesis chapter 4, verses 1 to 16, and I will read it for you. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, conceived and bore a son, and called his name Cain, for he said, I have gotten a man-child with the help of the Lord. Then she again bore his brother Abel, and Abel became a keeper of the flock, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in due time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering to the Lord of some of the fruit of the ground. So do all. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock, and of their fattest. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. So when the Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? Cain answered the Lord, Tell me, O Lord, why you have not respected me? Why you have not respected me, O Lord, or why you have not respected my offering? Then the Lord said to him, What have you done? And why did you offer the Lord an offering which was despised? Sin is lying at the door, and its desire is toward you, and you must master it. But if you do what is right, will it not be lifted up? And if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is toward you. Fear it, resist it, and it will flee. Now let's take a look at some interesting things from this passage. First, we see that Adam and Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel, and there were twins, just like Jacob and Esau, who were also brothers. But one interesting detail is that the Bible says that Abel was born after Cain. However, many believe that since the creation of Adam and Eve, a long period of time passed before the birth of Cain. This is based on the fact that when Adam and Eve realized that they had sinned against God, they hid themselves from God. And the passage says that they heard God walking in the garden in the day that man sinned, meaning that God was not in the garden before that day. In other words, God created the garden first, then placed Adam and Eve in it. Then after they sinned, they tried to hide. And this would mean that there was enough time for them to have children. However, if they were born immediately after they were created, they would not need to hide if they had been born before that day. Therefore, I believe that between the creation of Adam and Eve and the birth of Cain, approximately 120 years passed. We also learn that Cain was the oldest, being that he was born first, and Abel was the youngest. Notice that both of them had different occupations. Cain was a farmer, and Abel was a shepherd. So I think it is safe to say that Abel was more of an outdoors person, and Cain preferred to stay home. Another interesting detail is that both brought an offering to God, but Abel's offering was accepted and Cain's was not. The reason, according to the Bible, is because Cain offered what was convenient for him, and Abel offered what was precious to him. He chose to sacrifice an animal of his flock, whereas Cain only brought fruit from his field, even though we don't know exactly what kind of fruits they were. I want you to notice that they were offerings of the first fruits, or as it says in the book of Ruth, gleanings. One of the most interesting parts of the story is when God told Cain, What have you done, and why have you offered the Lord an offering which was despised? To me, it seems like Cain was very surprised by God's reaction to his offering, as if he thought that it was okay to bring whatever he wanted to God. Remember that these were the first offerings ever made to God, and therefore there were no guidelines for sacrifices yet. In other words, no law had been established. That would only happen later with Abraham. So it seems that Cain didn't understand why his offering was not acceptable, and he actually asked God to explain to him why he wasn't respected. And God's answer is very simple. your offering was despised. But the most interesting part comes next, because he tells Cain that sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is toward you, and you must master it. But if you do what is right, will it not be lifted up? And if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at the door, and its desire is toward you. Fear it, resist it, and it will flee. These words of God reveal three important truths. First, sin can be compared to an animal that is crouching at the door ready to jump over it and devour you. Second, the desire of sin is towards people. It does not matter who you are, where you live, or what you have done in your life. The desire of sin is always towards us. And third, the way to defeat sin is to resist it. So basically, God was telling Cain that if he continued doing what was wrong, sin would attack him. But if he did what was right, sin would go away. It saddens me to think that these were the first words of warning that God gave to man about sin. Because if he had followed this advice, maybe he wouldn't have killed his brother. But instead, shortly after this conversation, Cain killed Abel, probably out of jealousy and hatred. And this was the first murder in history. So why did Cain kill Abel? In my opinion, there are three reasons why. First, he was jealous of his brother. Second, he hated himself. Third, he didn't fear God. Let's examine each one. First, he was jealous of his brother. As we saw before, Abel's offering was accepted, and his was rejected. And this made him angry, so angry that his face fell. Imagine how you would feel if you did something for God and he rejected you. And then you ask him why, and he tells you, your offering was despised. You might think, I am not despised. I am great. I am wonderful. My gift may not be perfect, but I am. And this is exactly how Cain felt. He couldn't stand the fact that his gift was not accepted, and he allowed envy to control him. The second reason is closely related to the first, and that is that he hated himself. When someone hates himself, everything he does will reflect that hatred. He will hate others and even despise himself. In this state, he becomes angry and jealous easily. And this is exactly what happened to Cain. He hated himself and despised his gift. And because he hated himself, he hated his brother and ended up killing him. The third reason is that he didn't fear God. If Cain feared God, he would never have dared to kill Abel. Remember, Abel was not only his brother, but also his keeper of the flock. So he was responsible for his safety. But because he didn't fear God, he was able to take his brother's life. Some people may ask, why did God create a world where murder could happen? Well, let me remind you that before this moment, there was no murder, no death, and no pain in the world. Everything was perfect. But when Adam and Eve sinned, sin entered into the world, bringing death with it. Death did not come because God was unfeeling and wanted to cause harm. It came because of the consequences of sin. And remember, God gave humans free will. He could have made them robots without free will, but he didn't. He wanted them to choose him every day. He wanted them to love him because he was worthy to be loved, and not because they were forced to. And this leads me to the last question. What happened after Cain committed murder? I invite you to watch my next video, where I will tell you about the mark of Cain and how God protected him from being killed. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time.